good afternoon, everybody, and you are so welcome to another of our climate and nature webinars workshop. And this afternoon we have Gráinne Ryan from Antashka with us, and her colleague Jennifer from Green Schools. So Gráinne is going to be talking to us about climate action. And I just had a quick word with Gráinne before we came on, and just asking her how did she normally roll this out. So in the past, pre-COVID, she would roll this out as, I suppose, a bit of a travel show, and going to the various centres that are more centrally located, and teachers then would have attended her workshops in the centres. Now, obviously, that hasn't happened in nearly 2 years. So Gráinne is hoping that today's webinar will, I suppose, cover mostly what she would have covered at those training sessions in the centres, and hopefully in the not too distant future, Gráinne will be on the road again, visiting all the education centres and delivering this webinar along with other trainings for climate action. So we are delighted to have Gráinne here with us. This is her second webinar. She gave a webinar to primary schools yesterday, which was really well attended and lots of engagement and interaction. So we're looking forward to hearing from you again, Gráinne, and I know it to be a completely different perspective for post-primary school teachers. So welcome. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Assumpta, and thanks to everyone here today for joining this evening. Yeah, I'm a Climate Action Officer in the Environmental Education Unit of Antashka, and we coordinate the National Climate Change Action and Awareness Programme. That programme is sponsored by the Department of Environment, Climate and Communications. And as Assumpta said, I'm joined by my colleague Jennifer, who'll be sharing links with you in the chat as we go along. And if you have any questions, please put them in the Q&A box. Just makes it a little bit easier to filter them and make sure I get to all your questions. And I'll try and remember to stop every couple of minutes to check that as well. So today I'm going to basically walk through our climate action programme, introduce the secondary climate action resource. It comes with a set of climate cartoons, which I'll show you shortly, and the Cards Against Climate Change game, which is really popular with teenagers. And then towards the end, I'll present some of our survey results, which has been completed by 1,301 students to date. So that's interesting and something to look forward to. So yeah, the Climate Action Programme, it has loads of different elements, but the core 5 that I'll talk about today are teacher training, which you're going to get a taster for now, resource development, which I'll walk through how you can utilise the different chapters in practice in class, the Climate Ambassador Programme, Climate Action Week, and our Climate Hope forums, which obviously haven't happened during COVID, but hopefully we'll get back to them really soon. So what is the Climate Ambassador Programme? Here is a programme timeline. Basically every September we open applications for about a month. It's a really simple form you can fill in, takes about 10 minutes. So if you're interested, or any of your students are interested in becoming a climate ambassador for the following year, for example, this year our closing date was the 25th of October. And I know you've missed it for next year, but if you sign up to our newsletter, we'll notify you when applications reopen. So if you're successful, then in January and February, we host an initial training day. So you'll meet about 50 fellow climate ambassadors, and we usually have them in Dublin, Cork, Galway, and sometimes the Midlands, depending on demand. Then in March, we run a 4-week training series. That's where you'll have the opportunity to meet climate ambassadors from the previous 4 or 5 years. They come back and maybe tell a bit of their story, or just come back for a refresher as well. And then from April to September, we have weekly, sometimes fortnightly, optional network gatherings. So they're much smaller, usually gathering between 10 and 20 climate ambassadors all over the country. We try and hit as many counties as we can, and go to places of best practice, environmental management, and loads of different things like eco-villages and that. So they'd be on different topics like biodiversity, fast fashion, growing your own food, sustainable transport, and then also skills sharing between climate ambassadors. So we've had, creating podcasts, editing videos, that kind of thing. So we try and have something for everyone. In exchange for all of this free training, what we ask from every climate ambassador is that during their first year with us, they do 2 climate actions and 2 climate communications. A climate action could be, say in school, it could be going plastic free, or a climate communication could be poster campaign on why we should go plastic free, that kind of thing. Then in October, we run Climate Action Week. So this year it ran from the 11th to the 17th. And if any school here participated, please let us know in the chat box, and also thank you. And then at the end of November, we have a really lovely celebration called the Climate Ambassador Awards. So let's have a look. So last year, this is what we achieved, which, I just think it's incredible. Despite the pandemic, what climate ambassadors all over Ireland were doing. And remember the lockdowns we had, like all of this was on a really local level, but still some amazing results there. Okay, so a bit about Climate Action Week. For secondary school students this year, we did a survey last year, asked them, okay, what do you care about? What do you want to know more about? And by far the top topic that came up was fast fashion. So even though this documentary is 6 years old now at this stage, we chose to screen the true cost. So it's all about fast fashion and the global impact of our clothes, because a lot of the teenagers now in secondary school, say if you look at the 1st to 4th year cohort, they would have been too young to watch this when it originally came out. So they hadn't seen it. So we made that available for 72 hours. And then it was followed by a Fashion Fix webinar, which was hosted by sustainable influencer Fionnuala Moran. I think she's a fantastic role model for secondary school students. And then panelists, climate ambassador Natalie Pavone and founder of the Right Project, Kelly Dalton. So huge wealth of experience there. And that webinar is available on the Climate Ambassador YouTube. So if you do want to go back and watch the true cost with your students at some point, you can then maybe follow it up with the recording of that webinar. So on the same day as our Fashion Fix webinar, a lot of my lovely colleagues took on this challenge. Every year for Climate Action Week, I try and come up with some sort of novel challenge for them to do that's fun, but also like walking the talk environmentally. So I'll play that video for you now.
Hi, I'm Kathy.
I'm Joanne, and we're here in sunny Dunleary today with €50 to spend. We're on an outfit for one of us in the charity shops.
It's secondhand September, so we're gonna hit the shops.
Yay!
Full suit next, 40 quid.
What's up, 20 quid?
Amazing. 12 quid.
You're lovely. Taking a little coffee and cake break
from the shop.
underneath the lovely tree.
Happy with your purchases, Gary?
Delighted. Yay, second September. Hey, how's it going? So, myself and Donnie have been out doing our fashion haul in charity shops today, and absolutely delighted with what I got. Gorgeous suit and shirt for €35, and just really blown away with how much things have changed now in the second-hand shops. A lot more choice for men, a lot more guys out there shopping. So fellas, get out there. There's lots of great bargains to be had, and you know, sustainably shopping. You're doing your bits as well. So happy shopping.
Okay, so hopefully you enjoyed that video. If you want to let us know in the chat box if you're Team Cork, Team Liberties, Team Dunleary, or Team D7, that'd be great. But yeah, I'm obviously Team Liberties. So we also ran a climate pledge competition. So we had €500 in sustainable prizes. And we got well over 100 entries on Instagram. So it was really well attended by secondary school students. So I'll show you, we have 18 different pledges, and I'll play that video for you now. Right, so next thing we did after the Fashion Fix webinar, we handed over the Climate Ambassador Instagram. It's something we love to do every year to secondary school students to try and just amplify their voices. They love influencing their peers, so giving them that platform that's not their own Instagram account, basically. So you can watch the videos on the Climate Ambassador Instagram. I won't play them all now. You can check them out and maybe show them to your students. And then here you can see just some of the incredible content that secondary schools all over the country produced during Climate Action Week. I don't have the report finished yet for this year, but I really do think it's just going to blow all the other years out of the water. We've been doing it since 2017, and I really think this year kind of, made a big splash, thankfully. So yeah, then some other events that we organized outside of schools, but obviously teenagers were still very welcome. On the Sunday, we had a screening of Bog Standard, which is very near and dear to my heart. It's a short documentary all about bogs, produced by 3 young, amazing women, all climate ambassadors, of course. Then we also had a plant-based cook-along with Chef Audrey Crone. I will say my dinner didn't look like hers by the end of it, but it was very tasty. We had a webinar on planting trees, of course, coming into the best tree planting season in Ireland. A panel discussion on environmental education that also doubles as a special podcast episode of the Climate Ambassador podcast. We had an online art exhibition, which is still available on the Climate Culture website. I'll pop a link in for that at the end. And then we also participated in the EU Youth Climate Pact Challenge. So we had one Irish student get to the final 4 and got to pitch the idea to Executive Vice President Franz Timmermans. So that was very cool. So it was a really busy week, but hopefully we kind of had something for everyone. And all the resources are still available on the Green Schools website. I think Jen posted the link earlier. And you can also sign up to the Climate Action Week newsletter if you would like a reminder next year. I don't use that newsletter for the rest of the year, so you'll just get a reminder in September. And there you can see some results from last year. So yeah, some great stuff was happening, even though schools were locked down. But please do put it in your calendar for next year. The date is still to be confirmed, but it's either going to be the week of October 10th or the week of October 17th. We're just going to wait and find out when Maths Week is and then pick the other week. Because we usually end up overlapping with Maths Week, which is a shame. All right, cool. How am I doing for time? All good. So our Climate Hope Forums, we were funded in 2018 to run these all around the country. They really are just the most beautiful event. They're all based on the infamous World Cafe methodology. And they're just really one of my favorite things to ever leave this program. Unfortunately, we're not funded to do them anymore, but it doesn't mean you can't run your own version in school. And all of our Climate Hope Forum resources are freely available on the Green Schools website. And I think Jen's going to pop a link in the chat there. Thanks. But what we do have coming up, I'm not just telling you about the Climate Hope Forums for no reason. It's a slightly smaller scale, but they're called peer parliaments. So it's very EU-centric language, but they're pretty much a climate conversation, if I'm honest. They're going to run from tomorrow until the end of January, and they're going to focus on those 3 topics. So how can we eat more sustainably? How can we travel in a climate-friendly manner? And how can we make the energy transition socially fair? So what is really cool about these is all it is a conversation between 5 and 10 people or up to a whole class. Then the combined results from Ireland will feed directly into the conference on the future of Europe. So I guess for any of your students who are politically minded, and also for those that are not yet there, it's an opportunity to have their voices and opinions heard at that EU policymaker level. So please do get involved with them. At the end of this webinar, I'll ask Jen to pop in a Survey Monkey link. And one of the questions there is, do you want to get involved in the peer parliaments? So if you do, you can tick yes, and then I'll get in touch with you about them. Okay, so we're doing great for time. I suppose this is the main reason why we're here today. The Climate Action Teaching Resource developed this in 2018-19. What are years now since COVID? But before I published it, I got in touch with contacts in the NCCA and JCT for geography. So the key skills of junior cycle were considered first and foremost, as well as the framework for junior cycle. That's not to say you can't pick up this book and run it as a 10-week TY module. You absolutely can. So let me have a look. Yes. So you can work your way from chapter 1 right the way through to chapter 10, and using it as that full unit of learning over 10 weeks. Or you can pick up the resource just for 1 or 2 activities, depending on your class or depending what you've covered previously. So it's designed to be really flexible and to help you build that thematic learning experience, and work with lots of different teachers across multiple subjects. These are some of the strongest subject links and specific learning outcomes. Each are detailed in this table, but then also listed in full at the start of each chapter, which I'll show you in a minute. But there are loads more links depending on your expertise. So absolutely, like maths, business studies, home ec, art, music, Irish, and the foreign language subjects, which you'll see. Oh, and it's available in English and Irish, thanks to COG. So chapter 1, jump right in. Oh, let me just check the chat, sorry, before I go on to see if there's any questions. Nope, all good. Okay. Please do use the Q&A if you have any questions. But yeah, so before exploring the topic of climate change in class or during teacher training, I think it's really important to acknowledge and share your pre-existing impressions and thoughts. It's not about being right or wrong. I think it's really important to let your students know there's no wrong answer at this stage. We're just trying to gather a baseline. So maybe take a minute to yourself now and just think, what's the first word, image, or phrase that pops to mind when I say climate change? And just put the first word in the chat box now, please. Awesome. Rising sea levels, urgency, yes. Heat waves, global energy, global warming, fast fashion, thanks. Temperature. Yeah, very cool. What I will say is the words that I get now, I've been doing this exercise for, 5+ years. And the words that I get now are so, so different to the words we got 4 or 5 years ago. Guaranteed first word that goes in 5 years ago was polar bears, and melting ice caps as well. Whereas now what we're seeing is a much broader sense of what climate change is and how it's going to affect us at a more local and national level. So that is great. You know, it means the media is doing a better job at covering climate change, albeit not always accurately. But I think it's something undoubtedly that people are more aware of, which is great. So this template, it can be used to form a word flag, which is a Green Schools version of a word cloud, where the largest word is the one that lots of people wrote down, and then the smallest word is maybe only 1 or 2 people in the class thought of. So it's a nice visual reminder of where we started on that journey with our class or today, and how much knowledge we might gain along the way, or how our impressions might change. Yeah, depending on like different sources and that. So that is one really, really simple intro activity in the book in chapter 1. And then there's also a follow-on exercise, which is much more visual. So it uses this project called Climate Visuals to introduce imagery around, really powerful imagery around causes, impacts, and solutions of climate change. So if you're not aware of that resource, definitely write that one down, Climate Visuals, it's fab. And there's a link in the resource as well. Okay, now this one, if we were all in a room in an education center in real life, I would be whipping out the decks of cards and have you all playing this game around tables. But unfortunately, we can't do that today. But I'll just talk through the game really quickly. And to be honest, your students will probably know how to play it. So it works best, I think, in groups of 6 to max 8. And it can also be played in pairs if you have a really big class, you know, if you have 25 plus, or if you don't have enough cards for everyone to play individually. And I'm not going to read through all those rules now. But as I said, thanks to the fairly infamous Cards Against Humanity, which this game is based on, your students will probably know how to play it. And I can I can say like they'll be enthusiastic about it. But don't worry, the climate change version is obviously PC and developed for school. Basic aim is to win as many green cards as you can. And it's perfectly okay if they don't know every word. They don't need to know all the vocab while playing the game. When they get a card and they're unsure of a word, they just pop up to the board and write it down. And then at the very end of the game, the class goes through that list and basically comes up with a climate dictionary. So that's in chapter 2 as well. And I have a couple of decks of Cards Against Climate Change for people attending the webinar today. So anyone who completes the Survey Monkey, kind of maybe the first 10 teachers will say, I'll have a copy of the resource and the cartoons and the cards, and then everyone else, I have a copy of the resource for everyone. The cards are just a little bit more expensive, but you can print them as well from the Green Schools website. All right. So then chapter 3 is the longest chapter, but it's probably the most useful in terms of introducing climate change and climate science, especially as part of the new geography curriculum. So the learning outcomes, so let's zoom in, they're not exhaustive there. I had a much longer list, but these are the most applicable. And we were advised by the NCCA not to stretch learning outcomes too thin. So I just focused on those that are fully achieved rather than something that kind of touches on loads of different strands and briefly mentions, I don't know, like 7 different learning outcomes. So hopefully you appreciate that. Patrick, looking forward to playing that game. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. I'm not going to lie. It was tested on my friends and family one Christmas, maybe 2 or 3 years ago. It's good fun, yeah. Okay, so let's have a look at chapter 3. Oh yeah. Actually, I'll just go back for 1 sec. So it addresses strand 2, exploring how we interact with the physical world. and students should really be able to examine the causes and the implications of climate change. Some of the basic elements include our top 3 frequently asked questions, which if you've ever attended training with me before, you probably know the answer to all of these. But starts off basic. What's the difference between weather and climate? Are global warming and climate change the same? And is there a hole in the ozone layer? And does it cause global warming or climate change? I won't change those frequently asked questions until I get back something different from teacher training and working with students. They're still the top 3, so we're going to hammer them out. Then after that, we have some really nice graphics designed in the book. So you've probably all heard of the Goldilocks zone. We're not too hot, we're not too cold, we're just right. We're not like a freeze-dried desert, but we're also, we're not Venus either. Okay, and all of these are explained as well in the resource with extensive notes. Then we have a really nice one for the greenhouse effect, kind of looking at why the greenhouse effect is really important. We wouldn't really be here without it. So it's not a negative thing, it's just that we're intensifying that effect. We also look at the carbon cycle, greenhouse gases, then Earth's atmosphere, and then at the end, proof of anthropogenic climate change. So loads of different reasons why. Now, that is all covered as well in a Prezi, because I know teaching from a PDF or a resource isn't ideal. So I'll ask Jen to share. I actually just recently updated this earlier this year. So there is, the new updated Prezi on Climate Science 101. And the one in the resource is fine, like it's not inaccurate or anything. It's just 3 years ago. So I just wanted to update it a little bit. Cool. So hopefully you enjoy using that in class. Then chapter 4, I mentioned these cartoons. So the Irish illustrator Oisin McGann developed these for an EU weather stations project, and Green Schools bought them off him just because I felt they went really well with the resource. So I'll show you them here. And their printouts kind of like a little bit smaller than A4. Loads of different activities you can do with them in class. Also great to inspire students to communicate climate change in a really creative way. Not everyone is scientifically minded, but you might have an incredible artist or a comedian in the room that can really put their skills to use. So those are the cartoons. Then chapter 5, how am I doing for time? Good. Chapter 5 focuses on poetry, climate communications in the media. How do we evaluate a reliable source? What does that look like? And then we have some funny videos. So I'll show you one. You might have seen it before. It's Last Week Tonight with John Oliver. Again, it's about 4 or 5 years old, but I still think it's really good. And it gets the message across. I haven't seen a video that I prefer to use since then. So I'll play that for you now and you can let me know what you think.
The Earth. You may know it as that blue thing Bruce Willis is always trying to save. Or from its famous collaboration with Wind and Fire. Or just simply as that place where George Clooney lives. Anyway, the Earth had some genuinely bad news this week.
A White House report that says global warming threatens every part of the U.S.
This isn't something in the distant future. Climate change is already affecting us now.
Now. Smart move, Obama. That is a key shift in how to talk about climate change, because we've all proven that we cannot be trusted with the future tense. We've been repeatedly asked, don't you want to leave a better Earth for your grandchildren? And we've all collectively responded, Incredibly, this latest damning scientific report may still face an uphill climb with some of us.
There's that Gallup poll that came out last month, which found 1 in 4 Americans is skeptical of all the effects of climate change and thinks this issue's been exaggerated.
That doesn't matter. You don't need people's opinions on a fact. You might as well have a poll asking which number is bigger, 15 or 5. Or do owls exist? Or are there hats? The debate on climate change should not be whether or not it exists, it's what we should do about it. There is a mountain of research on this topic. Global temperatures are rising, heat waves are becoming more common, sea surface temperatures are also rising, glaciers are melting, and of course no climate report is complete without the obligatory photo of a polar bear balancing on a piece of ice. The only accurate way to report that 1 out of 4 Americans are sceptical of global warming is to say, a poll finds that 1 out of 4 Americans are wrong about something. Because a survey of thousands of scientific papers that took a position on climate change found that 97% endorsed the position that humans are causing global warming. And I think I know why people still think this issue is open to debate, because on TV, it is. And it's always one person for, one person against. And it's usually the same person for.
Bill Nye and Marsha Blackburn, welcome both of you to Meet the Press.
Bill Nye joins us now, along with climate change skeptic Mark Morano.
Joining me now to go head-to-head, Bill Nye, science educator and CEO of the Planetary Society.
In the crossfire, Bill Nye, the science guy.
Bill Nye, the science guy who believes in man-made global warming.
Yeah, that's right. More often than not, it's Bill Nye, the science guy, versus some dude. And when you look at the screen, it's 50-50, which is inherently misleading. If there has to be a debate about the reality of climate change, and there doesn't, then there is only one mathematically fair way to do it.
Last Week Tonight presents a statistically representative climate change debate.
Good evening. Joining me tonight, a climate change denier and, naturally, Bill Nye science guy.
Bill? John?
Yep.
Humans are causing climate change? No question.
Wait. Before we begin, in the interest of mathematical balance, I'm going to bring out 2 people who agree with you, climate skeptic, and Bill Nye, I'm also going to bring out 96 other scientists. It's a little unwieldy, but this is the only way you can actually have a representative discussion. So, yeah, please file in. Again, this is going to make the debate difficult. We shouldn't really be having it in the first place. But, so, representationally, climate skeptic, please make a case against climate change.
Well, I just don't think all the science is in yet. It's settled.
OK, and what is the overwhelming view of the entire scientific community? OK. Any response to that?
All right. So hopefully you get the idea. There's loads of videos there to choose from. Thankfully, this 50-50 climate debate isn't happening as frequently. In the Irish media, the likes of the Times and the Indo and the Journal and RTE as well are kind of amping up their coverage. And most of the time, they're scientifically accurate coverage. However, there are still media sources, you know, I'm not going to name any names, but some radio stations and that kind of thing who still do the kind of sensationalist 50-50 debate, climate skeptic, climate scientist. They don't have the same qualifications. But anyway, that's just one. I'll show you this 30-second one. It's from the Canadian government. They did a series of 6 videos. Save the snowy driveways, save the man caves. This one is save the pizza, which I'll show you. And again, it's just a novel way of communicating climate change.
Everything that goes into our pizzas comes from places like farms. But with climate change, we could experience more erratic weather that could damage Ontario's crops. Crops like tomatoes, green peppers, red peppers, zucchini, kale, garlic.
Who are you talking to?
Onions, mushrooms, artichokes, spinach.
It's time to save everything we love about Ontario. Learn how you can do your part at ontario.ca/climate change.
On mute there, Grania.
Again, how many times am I going to do that? Thank you so much. I was just saying I'm going to pause for a second because there's a fantastic question in the chat. So Dr. Patrick Ryan, wonder if he's any relative, Do you think the climate change debate is necessary for secondary schools? I do, and I'll explain why in a second. It is a good way to get students thinking critically, so it's worth pointing that there are skeptics out there, yes. I just haven't encountered any students who are skeptics. I would love to know what school you're in, that's fantastic. Also, because they're definitely the minority, they could be afraid to speak up. Although that's not usually the case with adult skeptics. I won't play it, but you can see the video there. So that is Danny Healy-Rae in the doll. So that might be one, Patrick, that you show some of your students. So they know there are skeptics here in Ireland as well. The only thing I would say is, while it's really good to be aware of skeptics, I would actually say it's better to engage with the people that are towing the line, because you have a much higher chance of converting them to, I suppose, when I say converting, it sounds like a religion. It's really not. What I mean is some skeptics can be aggressive, and I don't know how much of our time they're worth. So it's more like the people in the middle, which is the vast majority who might know about climate change, might not care at all about climate change, but could be brought around, baby steps and nudged in the right direction. So I would say they're the biggest cohort that we try to focus on at the minute anyway. Maybe in 10 years' time, we can focus on the diehard skeptics. But for now, I would say they're actually not worth the energy. Now, Cura Rock, we're starting to see students who don't really argue but are not bothered. Yeah, so this apathy, I think it's overload in those cases. They're just numb now. Yeah, absolutely. To be honest, I have been there myself personally a couple of years ago, working in this industry where I hit a wall and I was burnt out, and I just thought that I wasn't making any difference, and what was the point? So that's a really tough position to be in. What I would say is, we've all heard of climate anxiety. If you're even approaching that level, it is time to stop, take a minute, step back, reassess what you're capable of doing and what you're capable of caring about, what's going on in your life. And when you feel ready to make some changes, that's the time to do it. Let me see, Anne-Marie, I haven't encountered any skepticism within the student body. In many, many cases, they don't want to conform to reduce, reuse, recycling behaviours. Okay, they're all about climate change, but do not want to be active on their own role against it. That's really interesting. Towards the end of this webinar, I will present some survey results from over 1,000 students. So yeah, I'd be very interested to know what school that is. But sure, let's continue on for now, and I'll show you the survey results soon. So back to the resource, chapter 6, I believe. Yes. This is probably my favorite chapter. Little bit nerdy, I'm gonna be honest, but it's really good for differentiation and essentially covers the two main learning outcomes in strand 1, so exploring the physical world. Students should be able to gather, record and interpret weather data. Students should also be able to classify global climates and analyse the factors that influence the climate in Ireland. So the two main activities, one is called Weather Rescue, which is it uses Zooniverse, which is an international online citizen science platform. If you haven't heard of it, definitely check it out. If you have a computer room in your school, even better, or they could do it at home if they have access. Basically, this incredible climate scientist, Ed Hawkins, who I absolutely love, he developed this citizen science project to basically interpret historical weather data that we do have in order for him to observe current climate change and then also map future trends. So a lot of the massive computers that we have working all of these climate algorithms are thanks to citizen scientists who have manually recorded historical data. So changed it from written records into digital. So that's a great thing to be part of. And you might have heard of Show Your Stripes. So Ed Hawkins produces all of these really visual graphics around climate change. And then the second activity is called Climate Data. This is a lot more local to Ireland, so it utilizes Met-Éireann data and encourages students to complete exercises in Excel to critically analyze patterns and identify any anomalies they can. So it's very easy. There's a couple of Excel files that I have already kind of sorted through and made a little bit more user-friendly. And then if you have any super tech savvy students, they can also use pretty much any data set from the Met-Éireann website. So it's all freely accessible, which is amazing.
Just a question there, Grania. Would these resources be more suitable for a TY module or for more junior cert students?
Yeah, great question. So I think I covered that at the start, but you might have missed the first couple of minutes. Originally, when I wrote this, it was geared towards junior cycle. So I worked with NCCA and JCT for geography, that team. They gave me a huge amount of feedback. So all of those learning outcomes that are listed at the start of every chapter are referring to the junior cycle. However, there's 10 chapters there, and it could be a 10 to 12 week TY module. Absolutely no bother. Loads of schools have used it in that way. But in terms of the learning outcomes, it's geared towards junior cycle. Great. Let me just have a look at, oh yeah, great. That's just more chat. Fab. Great question. Thank you. Now, where was I? Okay, so then chapter 7, we're nearly there. It's all about guided research and group presentations, which I'm sure you do lots of. Students basically should be able to differentiate between different types of energy resources produced by the physical world. They should also be able to evaluate environmental, economic, and social consequences of rock exploitation and energy resources. So I've provided 5 core sources to kind of guide them in answering 5 research questions. So they can do that individually or in groups. Chapter 8 is all about our Citizens' Assembly, which was entitled, How Can the State Make Ireland a Leader in Tackling Climate Change? I feel like this chapter is actually really relevant at the minute with the launch of the new Climate Action Plan, because a lot of those actions originated from our own citizens. And this chapter, I guess, encourages students to assess those interrelationships between the physical world, tourism, and transport for 3 topics. So all the videos and notes from 2 sessions at the original Citizens' Assembly are linked, and students just pick whatever theme they're interested in and then answer some questions about it. And then the 9th chapter, this one was mainly designed for Green Schools coordinators who want to integrate climate action and climate change into their action plan if they're working on any other theme within Green Schools, or if teachers want to get involved in Climate Action Week. So here is a sample climate action plan. So you can see that's focusing on banning single-use plastics in school, which is a really popular one with secondary school students. And then, there's also lots of pledges to choose from. Then chapter 10, if hopefully reflection is something that happens as part of every class, but I know you're all under crazy amounts of pressure when it comes to time. So it's just a reminder to kind of check in with your students, see how far they've come, what's been working, what you might need to revise, and what might need to be adjusted going forward, that kind of thing. So that kind of brings me to the end of the resource, and we're doing great for time. So if you want a hard copy, I'll ask Jen to pop the link in the chat now. The only thing that I ask is when you're filling it in, please include your school air code, because it's an awful waste of postage when I get resources sent back because, I don't know, they couldn't find the school or whatever. So it's the first question on that SurveyMonkey link. So just pop your address in and your school air code, not your personal address, sorry, your school address. Great. We're nearly there. Okay, so I promised some survey results. I actually just updated this last week, so it's really fresh. The information was gathered, I think I mentioned already, from over 1,300 secondary school students, starting in April 2019, right the way up to the 31st of October this year. So, do you think climate change is happening? 91% say yes. 6% don't know, and 3% think climate change is not happening. So we still have a bit of work to do. 89% of students think that human activities are the main cause of climate change. 8% think natural changes are the main cause, and 3% don't know. Then 49% of students are somewhat concerned about climate change. 28% are very concerned, 18% not really concerned, and 5% not concerned at all. There's no right answer to that question. It's just something that we need to have in our mind if there is a lot of climate anxiety in the classroom. I also have a resource called The Ethics of Climate Change that one of my colleagues, Lucas, wrote. So I'll share that link at the end as well. And that I've also shared it with the education unit for the follow-up. So when asked which statement is closest to the truth, 88% of students said most scientists agree that human-caused climate change is happening. So they're ahead of the curve if you think back to the video I showed earlier. 9% didn't know, and 4% thought most scientists agree that human-caused climate change is not happening. So very much in the minority there. And this is very relevant to the chat earlier. So when asked if they personally take any climate actions, an amazing 80% said, you know what, I do conserve energy by turning off the lights and electronics when not in use. So that's great. There's obviously something happening there, but a lot of the other actions are much lower. So 66% avoid disposable plastic by using a reusable bottle or travel mug. So that's great again, and also kind of solidifies, you know, how many secondary schools out there now want to go plastic free. It's coming from the students. Then 49% of students reduce emissions by walking, cycling, or getting public transport to school. That's actually incredible. 49% is much higher than the national average. So maybe some of the schools that are using this resource are not necessarily representative of the whole country. But I don't know that for certain. This next figure, so 33% try to educate and encourage others to take climate actions and protect the environment. That's going back to that peer-to-peer education. I honestly think there is no better way to learn something than by teaching it. So if you have fifth years going into second years to talk about climate change, first of all, those fifth years will remember it a lot stronger. They'll have a much more personal memory related to that information. But also the second years that are listening to the fifth years, they might idolize them a bit and they might be influenced by them a little bit more than they would if it was me or you talking to them about climate change. Then 34% consider the global impact by looking at like buying local food, fair trade products, cruelty-free, all that kind of thing. 31% save water by having showers of 5 minutes or less. And some teachers in the audience might think that's a good thing or a bad thing, depending on your school. And then at the very end of the bucket is 19% reduce their carbon footprint by eating less meat and or dairy products. 19% might seem very low, but actually compared to the national average, it's very high. So they are leading that trend, which is amazing. So a bit about our respondents. 54% identified as female, 41% identified as male, and 5% declined to disclose their gender identity, which is perfectly fine. Then less than half of respondents chose to answer questions in relation to their age, which is something for us to bear in mind going forward. Maybe they don't want to be identified as junior cycle or senior cycle. I don't know. If you have any feedback on that, please let me know. But of the half of the students who did respond to the age question, 73% were aged 12 to 15 and 21% were aged 16 to 18, which kind of goes with this resource. We did gear it towards the junior cycle. Now, that actually brings me to the end. So I'm going to have a quick look and see if there are any questions. Fab. So Jen has posted the link to SurveyMonkey in the chat box now. All you have to do is fill that in, first question, school address, and if there's any other questions, or if you want to pick up that conversation that was started earlier, I'd be very happy to do that. Just let me know. And Jane, is the book available? Yes, it is, completely free. So if you just click the SurveyMonkey link and pop in your postal address, your school postal address, I will send you out a copy. All of the Green Schools resources are always free. We're a charity, so we don't charge for books. Oh, thanks so much. Lovely comments. Great. Well, if there's no other questions, Assumpta, do you want to wrap up? Do you have any other events?
Just, I suppose, just to say for people to maybe just go on to the other CPD that's on. We have one on again tonight. Now, honestly, we've had so many different CPD. If Patrick can remember what CPD is on tonight, he might put it into the chat box. And we have other CPD happening on Wednesday and Thursday. And again, we just look a phenomenal group of teachers on a Tuesday evening in November. So well done, everybody, and a lot of engagement. I know people are really happy, Gráinne, with the resources. You know, resources are so important, and we keep coming back to this with the resources that you put up there today. So thank you to yourself and to Jennifer in the background there, and well done, everybody. And hopefully see people on the 3 remaining CPD. Okay.
Amazing. I look forward to it. Thanks so much, Assumpta.
Bye for now.
Bye, guys.